Get out of that seat before I call security. First class in for standby passengers. The voice rang out from the front of the cabin, sharp and loud. Just above the hum of the idle engines, Captain Erica Vaughn stood tall in her navy blazer, blocking the aisle with both hands on her hips, addressing Caleb Sterling like she was clearing out a stowaway. Her tone left no room for misunderstanding. She wasn't asking, she was asserting. A white man seated to Rose's back chuckled under his breath, shaking his head with a smirk. Another glanced away, pretending to scroll through his phone, but everyone heard it. Everyone saw it. Caleb, seated calmly in charcoal leather, didn't move. He didn't blink. He simply looked up at Erica with a slow, deliberate breath and met her glare with silence. He had no interest in explaining himself to someone who'd already decided he didn't belong. His hands were folded in his lap, his posture relaxed, his face unreadable. Erica, mistaking quiet for submission, stepped forward. Do you have a premium code? Because unless someone scanned you in by accident, this isn't your seat. Caleb didn't answer. Not yet. He glanced around the cabin, the polished wood paneling, the soft overhead lighting, the 6 other passengers now watching like an audience frozen before a drop. He looked down at his outfit, dark jeans, simple sneakers, a gray crewneck shirt, unbranded, unapologetic. Erica assumed he was on standby, or worse, someone's assistant. She never stopped to ask. Just a second before her outburst, Caleb had placed his carry-on bag next to his seat. That's when Howard Gaines, a venture capitalist in his late 40s, brushed past and shoved Caleb's bag aside with his foot. Don't block the aisle, he muttered. Some of us actually paid to be here. Howard adjusted his designer coat and dropped into the seat across from Caleb like a man staking his claim. Caleb said nothing. But the quiet changed. It wasn't surrender. It was strategy. What Erica and Howard didn't know, what not a single person on that jet knew, was that Caleb Sterling didn't just book a seat on this plane. He owned the plane, owned the company that ran it, owned the private air terminal they were parked at. And in 30 minutes, he'd own the outcome of every word being said right now. But this wasn't about showing teeth. It was about watching people reveal who they were when they thought you were beneath them. Caleb reached into his jacket and slowly handed Erica a generic boarding slip. No name, no gold emblem, just a barcode. It was a decoy, printed intentionally for this test. Erica didn't even scan it. She waved it away. Not premium, she announced to the entire cabin. You'll need to exit the aircraft. Across the aisle, a younger white man named Corey Blake raised his phone, thumb hovering over the record button. Should we be filming this? He whispered before the question could finish leaving his mouth. Tara Monroe, an HR consultant with a practice calm, placed her hand on his arm and whispered back, Talk. Don't post. If there's a line to be held, we hold it with our voices. Corey nodded but didn't lower the phone. Meanwhile, Devin Walsh, a marketing director, leaned toward Caleb. This feels wrong, he murmured. You don't have to take this. Caleb turned his head slightly and replied in a tone barely above a breath. Then don't watch it happen. Erica wasn't finished. She turned back to the passengers and said with performative concern, We're trying to verify everyone's credentials. Thank you for your patience while we clear this up. Caleb tapped a small button on his smartwatch and lifted his phone. Simone, he said. The voice on the other end was immediate, calm. Standing by, sir. Begin Protocol 7, he said. I want everything logged, verbally, already in progress, she replied. Erica narrowed her eyes. Who's Simone? She asked. Caleb didn't respond, but behind her, Howard piped up again. This is what happens when we let anyone in, he said, loud enough for all to hear. It cheapens the entire experience. With smug satisfaction, he pulled a metal badge from his coat pocket and flashed it toward the cockpit. It wasn't official. It was something he had made, a mock VIP medallion. Tara gave him a sharp look. No one's impressed, she said. Howard smiled without warmth. Some people still need reminders. Then, without breaking eye contact, he dropped a small folded paper next to Caleb's foot. Caleb picked it up. 3 words, handwritten in capital letters. Trickoch. Fraud. Caleb turned the paper over in his hand, then held it up so the cabin could see. This speak for anyone else here? He asked. Devansted. Not for me, Corey added. That's disgusting. Double quotes Erica, watching it all unfold. Finally snapped. You have 60 seconds to exit this aircraft, or I'll have security remove you. Caleb calmly leaned forward, pressed his phone back to his ear, and said, Simone, call it in. Simone's reply came through with measured certainty. Confirmed. Executing. Escalation now. Logged under verbal authority. At that moment, the power shifted. The weight of what Caleb had set in motion moved through the cabin like a change in air pressure. Howard looked up, confused. Erica bristled, stepping back. What exactly are you trying to pull? She asked. Caleb gave her the smallest of smiles. You'll know soon enough, then he added, in a quiet voice only Devin and Tara could hear. This isn't about the seat. It's about the silence that follows when people get treated like this every day. And no one says a word, and from the way Erica's shoulders stiffened, from the way Howard finally fell silent, it was clear the 30-minute clock had started ticking, and none of them were ready for what it would bring. If you've ever been judged by your skin, your silence, or your seat, don't look away. This isn't just a story about one man. It's about what happens when quiet dignity challenges loud disrespect. Stay with us, because in 30 minutes, Injustice boards a plane and gets grounded. Captain Erica Vaughn wasn't done. Not even close. She had mistaken Caleb Sterling for a man who would shrink under pressure. Instead, he'd done the opposite. He'd sat still, calm, unbothered. That made her angrier. She stormed back down the aisle and returned with First Officer Paul Kendrick, a gray-haired man in his 50s who wore his nervousness like a second uniform. That's him, Erica said, pointing at Caleb as if identifying a threat. Ugh, not on the manifest. Seats unauthorized. Paul hesitated, looked at Caleb, then looked at the others. Do we have confirmation? He asked softly. Do you want me to double-check with ground ops? Erica didn't blink. Security's coming. Let them sort it. Then she turned back to Caleb and added, just loud enough for the front row to hear. Maybe if your company focused more on training and less on takeovers, you'd know where to sit. That one sentence sent a murmur through the cabin. Devin Walsh let out a breath like a pressure valve. Caleb, still seated, turned his head. You think that's what this is about? Erica crossed her arms. I think you're out of place. Just like Crestwing Ventures was when it swallowed my former employer. Caleb raised an eyebrow, the first trace of curiosity touching his otherwise composed face. That was it. Her resentment, her pride hadn't been bruised by an error. It had been shattered by a merger. This wasn't about policy. It was personal. Howard Gaines, seated with his fake badge still resting on his lap, jumped in. He's been squatting in that seat since we boarded. No ticket, no status. I mean, come on. Corey Blake raised his phone again, hovering once more near the record button. Is this really happening? He asked. Tara Monroe turned and faced him fully. If you film this, you're making it worse. We're here. We speak. That's the accountability. Corey hesitated, then slowly lowered his phone again. Paul looked back at Erica. Maybe we should wait, too. We're not waiting, she snapped. He's been unverified since boarding. I want him off this jet before wheels up. Devin stood now. You don't even know who you're talking to, he said, voice firm, cutting through the luxury stillness like a warning bell. He's done nothing wrong, and you keep escalating. Erica spun toward him. And you are a paying passenger who's not. Blind. Devin's eyes burned. This is profiling. Pure and simple. Paul turned back toward the front, but didn't move. Caleb reached into his jacket and placed his phone against his ear again. Simone. Still with you. Sir, escalate Protocol 7, Caleb said softly. Let them keep digging. Copy. Logs updated. And ... Paul looked shaken. Caleb glanced at Paul. The man had begun shifting from one foot to the other, behind him. A ripple of discomfort began to spread through the cabin. Nya Turner, who had stayed quiet until now, looked up from her seat across the aisle. Her voice was almost a soft to hear. I've seen this before. Same gate, same crew, just different day. Caleb met her eyes for a beat, then turned back toward Erica. You said I was unverified. Say that again. Erica squared her shoulders. You're unverified. No record, no premium status, and no right to sit here, even if I built the jet. Caleb asked. Erica blinked. What? Even if the company that designed the seat under you belongs to me. You don't expect anyone to believe that. Howard laughed. You see the kind of games these people play. Tara had had enough. These people, she repeated, her voice cold. Want to say that again, Howard? He raised his hands. Don't twist my words. Oh, no need, Tara said. They twisted themselves just fine. Paul finally stepped forward. Captain, maybe we hold on security for a second. Just a second. Erica didn't respond. Instead, she turned to the intercom and muttered into her headset. A moment later, the door at the rear of the jet opened, and Victor Crane entered. Security lead for the charter team, shoulders squared like a soldier on call. Problem? He asked, scanning the cabin. Seat dispute, Erica said flatly. Remove him. Caleb didn't stand, didn't flinch, but the atmosphere cracked. Corey stood now. No, he hasn't done anything. Nya rose too. You're removing him because of his skin, Devon added. This is your line. You're crossing it. Victor stepped forward, unsure now. Captain, I don't see anything physical. I don't. Erica cut him off. That's an order. Paul stayed rooted. Caleb leaned back and placed his hands on the armrests. Simone, status. Corporate monitoring. Passengers registering verbal complaints. Cabin escalation confirmed. Noted. Caleb's voice stayed calm, but inside, the fire was building. Not rage, resolution. Devon pointed at Victor. You grab him, and that's on record in every passenger's mind. You hear me? Every word spoken in this cabin's been witnessed. Victor's jaw clenched. I followed chain of command. Tara stepped between them, and I followed decency. Howard scoffed. You're all making this dramatic. Caleb finally stood. Slowly, deliberately. Howard, he said, what exactly do you think is happening here? I think you're pretending to be something you're not. And what's that? Important. Caleb turned to Erica. You called for removal. You raised your voice. You made it public. But you never once asked me for my name. Didn't need to, she replied. Your name doesn't matter if your status is invalid. Then let me help you with both. Caleb said. His hand hovered over his phone again. Simone, ready. Sir, hold directive. Holding. Paul took a step forward. Captain, I think you need to pause. Erica didn't answer. She was locked in place. Unsure which way to turn, the cabin had turned against her. Against Howard. Against what had started as confidence and had curdled into something uglier. Nya sat back down and whispered, They never think we're the ones in charge. Caleb remained standing. The whole jet had become a case study in exposure. Bias revealed not through technology or social media, but through the human voices inside. That cabin. Through choice, through silence that became resistance. And in that moment, Caleb didn't just feel the cabin tilt in his favor. He knew the balance of power had already shifted. Now, all that remained was to land it. Captain Erica Vaughn wasn't backing down. Not after being challenged in front of passengers. Her pride, already bruised by the merger that turned her former charter company into a Crestwing division, was now fully inflamed. She stepped closer to Caleb Sterling, who remained standing near his seat. Posture composed, but gaze unwavering. I don't care who you say you are, she hissed. Show me proof. Show me a booking confirmation. Show me a wire transfer, a black card, a balance sheet, anything, or get off this plane. Her voice cracked at the edges, just enough for Paul Kendrick to glance away in discomfort. Caleb tilted his head slightly, as if examining her. So, it's about money now? He asked. It's about protocol, Erica snapped. People pay for access. You don't just walk on looking like ... She stopped short, but the implication was already hanging in the air, heavy and offensive. Looking like what? Devon asked from across the aisle, rising slowly. Say it. Go on. Erica flushed. I meant unverified. No, Caleb said, voice low. You meant exactly what you didn't say. Howard Gaines, still seated and smug, laughed under his breath. You want to be treated like you belong. Dress the part. Caleb turned his eyes on him, unblinking. And what part are you playing? Venture thief, faux executive, or just professional liar? Howard's smile froze. I could buy you twice over. Caleb didn't move. You couldn't afford my silence. At that moment, Mia Lang, the youngest crew member on board, appeared from the galley. She approached Erica with a concerned expression. Captain, there's a security concern at the terminal. Should we delay departure? Erica shook her head. No, we delay for one reason only, unauthorized passengers. This man is holding us up. She turned to Victor Crane, the jet's lead security officer, and pointed at Caleb. Remove him. Victor stepped forward, his walk deliberate, his body language tense. You need to come with me, he said firmly. Now, Paul stepped in quickly. Wait, Victor, just pause. Let's think this through. He's disruptive, Mia said loudly. He's raising tensions. We have to follow safety protocol. He hasn't raised his voice once. Tara Monroe said from her seat. Not once, but everyone around him has. He's not in the system, Mia repeated. That's what matters. Caleb reached for his phone again. Simone, still here. Sir, status. Passenger complaints logged, crew statements recorded verbally. You have authorization to proceed. Execute final phase of Protocol 7. But wait. For my signal? Copy. Standing by. Caleb lowered the phone and looked directly at Victor. You put your hands on me in front of these people, and it won't be policy that ends your career. It'll be memory, because everyone in this cabin will remember exactly who stood up and who didn't. Victor hesitated. I'm following orders, and I'm giving you one, Caleb said, his voice now edged with steel. Step back. The pause stretched. Then Erica barked. Victor. Victor didn't move. Corey Blake, who had been quietly observing from his seat, stood up. I know what this is. I've seen it before, not in private jets, but in offices, in conferences, in boardrooms. You think because he doesn't announce himself, he's beneath you, and you think standing will make you noble, Howard said, rolling his eyes. Sit down. You first, Corey replied, voice firm, preferably off the plane. Erica turned toward Corey. You're out of line. So is your leadership, he said, and I won't be silent while you throw someone out over your own bias. Nyash said, too. You didn't even ask for his name. You saw his skin, you saw his clothes, and you assumed. Erica's face tightened. Enough, Victor. Remove him. But Paul Kendrick stepped between them. Captain, I'm officially objecting. This has gone far enough. You don't have the authority to override me, Erica said. Then escalate it. Caleb cut in, because this won't be quiet. Not today. Victor finally spoke again. I can't do this. Excuse me. Erica asked. I'm not removing someone who hasn't broken any rules, and I'm not taking the fall for it. Nya stepped closer. This will go on your record. Victor. So be it. Victor turned and walked away. Erica looked like she had been slapped. Caleb slowly took his seat again, then looked around the cabin, letting the silence settle like dust after a storm. Then came the crack in the armor. Paul Kendrick's voice, soft but audible. Captain. Mia told me to call security before you ever said anything. She said if he didn't leave, we should claim he was aggressive. But he wasn't. Not once. That admission broke the room open. Passengers gasped. Erica turned slowly toward Paul, horror blooming on her face. You said what? I didn't act on it, Paul stammered. But yes. She said we needed to protect the cabin image, and that meant removing anyone who didn't look the part. Tara rose. Again, she said that. Paul nodded. I didn't agree. But I didn't speak up either. I regret that. Caleb turned to Mia. Is that true? She froze. I don't recall saying those exact words, but words were said, Caleb replied. Enough to make another man lie, and nearly put hands on me. Devon, still standing, whispered. This is disgusting. Corey looked around the room. Why didn't anyone else say anything sooner? Caleb answered quietly. Because silence is easy when it's not aimed at you. He stood up one more time, straightened his jacket, and looked directly at Erica. You asked for proof. You demanded it. You accused me, mocked me, tried to erase me. She didn't speak. He took one step forward. Then let me give you what you asked for. He pulled a single black card from his wallet and held it up. Not to show status, but to signal something deeper. My name is Caleb Sterling. I am the CEO of Crestwing Ventures, and I own this aircraft, every bolt, every wire, every salary issued for this crew. Gasps rang out across the cabin. Corey's mouth dropped open. Nia covered her lips. Devon looked stunned. Paul's eyes welled with visible regret. Erica, pale now, whispered, That's not possible. It's already done. Caleb said, You were so busy trying to push me out. You didn't notice you were standing in my space. Mia's lips trembled. Victor looked down. Howard reached for his badge again, then thought better of it. Simone, Caleb said into the phone. Now, final phase confirmed, cabin override logged. Executing internal notification, standing by for next directive. Caleb let the moment hang. And then with the quiet control of a man who'd waited long enough, he spoke just loud enough for all to hear. Now let's begin. The silence after Caleb Sterling's revelation didn't last long. Erica Vaughn's breathing grew heavier, her eyes darting around the cabin like she was searching for a way out that didn't exist. Mia Lang took a step back, lips parted but frozen, as if all her justifications had suddenly gone dry. Victor Crane lowered his head and stepped away from the aisle, no longer standing guard, but standing down. Caleb remained steady in the center of the cabin, hands relaxed at his sides, eyes scanning every face, not with arrogance, but with clarity. Captain Vaughn, he said calmly, this is your final chance to speak as a leader, not a defendant. Erica didn't reply. The weight of what she had done, what she had assumed, ordered, and defended, was pressing down on her from all sides. Paul Kendrick, who'd already confessed to withholding the truth, sat down slowly, as if his knees could no longer hold the guilt. Nia Turner leaned forward from her seat, voice trembling. I've boarded dozens of flights. This is the first time someone like me said the thing we all knew, and backed it up with power. Corey Blake stepped into the aisle, camera still off, hands raised in solidarity. We all watched it happen, start to finish. You can't walk that back. Caleb nodded once and lifted his phone. Simone, still here. Corporate has received everything. All verbal logs confirmed. Crew incident file created. Authority established. Good, he said. Eyes never leaving Erica. Then issue the standing order for immediate termination of Erica Vaughn, Mia Lang, Paul Kendrick, and Victor Crane. A sharp breath echoed across the cabin. Erica's hand flew to her chest. You can't fire us like this, she said, voice shaking. Now, in front of them, exactly in front of them, Caleb replied. Because you humiliated me in front of them. Let them hear what justice sounds like when it doesn't knock. It responds. Paul buried his face in his hands. Mia whispered, Please. I didn't mean for it to go that far. You lied. Caleb said, You fabricated threats. You escalated a peaceful moment into a crisis because you didn't like what I looked like in that seat. And Paul, Caleb turned to him, voice still level. You may not have started it, but you stood behind it, until now. Silence was your contribution. Paul could only nod, eyes glassy. I should have stopped it sooner. You should have never allowed it to begin? Caleb answered. Devon, standing now with a full view of the cabin, shook his head. This is the most honest moment I've seen on a plane in my life. Tara Monroe stood beside him. It's not just honest, it's overdue. Caleb motioned toward the rear of the aircraft. You're relieved of duty. All of you, disembark immediately. Final pay will be issued. Access revoked. Compliance teams will handle documentation. Erica's voice cracked. I gave this company everything. You gave it contempt. Caleb replied. Not harshly, but with an authority that closed the door. She stepped back, shoulders shaking, and nearly bumped into Victor, who still hadn't moved. Victor, Caleb added, you were given the choice. You followed bias, then you hesitated. But the damage was done. Victor nodded. I was wrong. I won't fight it. But just as the crew gathered their things, ready to disembark, something shifted again. Mia turned toward Caleb, hands trembling, and said through broken breath, There's something else. I need to say it now. Caleb raised an eyebrow. Speak. Mia looked down, then back up. Voice quiet but clear. There were complaints, at least 10, over the last year, against Erica, from black passengers, from staff. I filed none of them. I deleted them. I told Paul about 2. We were afraid corporate would overreact. The cabin gasped. Caleb didn't move. But the expression in his eyes changed. Disappointment layered over restraint. You erased them? Yes, Mia said, crying now. I didn't know how else to protect the crew. Erica was respected. She flew for 20 years. At what cost? Tara asked. 20 years of silence. Simone's voice came through the phone speaker now. Mr. Sterling, corporate has just confirmed Mia Lang's deletion of passenger complaints. Violation of ethical and federal aviation standards. Her dismissal is being upgraded to cause-based, with internal review scheduled. Understood, Caleb said. Continue the audit. I want a full record brought to light, already in motion. Simone, confirmed. Passengers watched in stunned quiet. Howard Gaines finally spoke again, rising slowly, attempting one last grab at control. You've made your point, Caleb. Maybe a private discussion now. Howard, Caleb interrupted. You don't get to pivot now. You mocked me. You shoved my bag. You called me a fraud. And then you tried to shrink when the truth grew taller than you. You are permanently banned from Crestwing Aviation. Your client profile is revoked. Your firm's account will be flagged for executive review. Howard's face turned red, then pale. You can't. I already did. Corey, watching from the side, said. And that's the sound of the system correcting itself. Caleb let the moment breathe. Let it settle. Then he faced the remaining passengers. There's no press here. No recording. No camera crew. Just people. Witnessing what happens when power doesn't posture, but acts. He looked at Nia. You spoke truth earlier. You said you've seen this happen before, too many times. She replied. Then I hope you never see it again on a Crestwing flight, Caleb said, because this ends today. And as the crew began stepping off the aircraft, one by one, stripped of the authority they misused, the cabin finally fell into a stillness that didn't feel tense. It felt clean. Caleb Sterling remained standing at the center of the cabin, watching the last of the dismissed crew exit down the narrow aisle in silence. The moment they disappeared behind the cabin door, a hush fell, not heavy like before, but expectant, like everyone was waiting for something new to begin. Caleb didn't sit. He looked around the room, locking eyes with every passenger one by one, not asking for approval, not performing power, but affirming presence. This wasn't just about one crew, he said quietly. It was about a culture, and that culture ends today. His voice didn't rise, but it filled the cabin like oxygen. Effective immediately, Crestwing Aviation will adopt the Crestwing Equity Program across every flight, every crew, every client. We will mandate real-time, bias training, require passenger complaint audits, and remove internal discretion over profile-based removals. This won't be buried in policy. It'll be spoken aloud. In every cabin, Simone's voice came through on the phone, now resting on Caleb's seat armrest. Confirmed, press release prepared, audit protocols being uploaded to staff briefings within the hour. Devon leaned forward, his tone still charged. "You're doing this right here, where it happened," Caleb answered. "That's the only place it should begin." Nia smiled faintly. "Feels different already." Tara nodded. "It's what real reform looks like, not a memo." "A moment," Corey added. "You just rewrote the atmosphere." Caleb turned toward the rear of the cabin. "Simone, ensure this flight is grounded for inspection. We don't take off with rot in the walls." "Understood, sir." Coordination already in motion. Then, something unexpected. Victor Crane, still seated in the back, head bowed, stood and stepped forward slowly. He looked unsure, no longer the firm-voiced security officer from before, but a man carrying something heavier than authority. "Mr. Sterling," he said, "there's something I need to say before I leave this aircraft." Caleb gave him a nod. "Go ahead." Victor cleared his throat. Before the flight, there was a document, a checklist update. Looked standard, but it wasn't. It was written by Mia. She told me to enforce a new cabin readiness protocol that excluded anyone unverified through dress and demeanor. I didn't question it. I should have. I thought it was just language. Caleb folded his arms. But it was more than that. It was targeting, Victor said, shoulders hunched. Coded words, used to justify removals before escalation. It was crafted after your company bought her charter firm. She never got over it. She planned to weed out passengers she didn't think fit the image. A long pause, and you enforced it. I did, Victor admitted, but I didn't understand the purpose until this flight. Until now. Devon's voice rose. So this was never just about one man. It was a system inside your own ranks. Caleb exhaled through his nose, jaw locked. "Simone," he said, "log Victor's statement. Flag the checklist for internal review. Cross-check all past removals based on Mia's language." "Logged and flagged," Simone replied. "Pattern matching already underway. We'll know within the hour how." Deep it went. Tara stood beside Caleb now. "You're not just cleaning house. You're lifting the floorboards." Caleb turned to Victor. "You're no longer head of cabin security. But your confession just prevented a deeper infection. You'll be placed on administrative review with full cooperation expected." "Understood," Victor said quietly. "And thank you for not burying it." Victor nodded and returned to the back row. No longer a guard, but a man facing what he helped build. Caleb took a breath, then finally sat, easing into the very seat Erica had once tried to deny him. He looked out the small circular window beside him. Morning had fully broken. Sunlight crept across the tarmac, brushing the wing with a golden edge. Then he looked across the aisle at Nia. "You were the first person to look up. The first to say it felt familiar." "That matters?" Nia smiled. "So does being seen. What do you design?" Caleb asked. "Mostly commercial interiors," she said, shrugging lightly. "Trying to bring more black influence into luxury spaces. But clients usually tell me to keep it neutral." "Let's change that," Caleb said. "You'll be invited to Crestwing's headquarters next month. We're redoing our fleet interiors, and I want your eyes on all of it." Nia's mouth dropped slightly. "You serious?" "Deadly," Caleb said. "Visibility starts with who shapes the space." Corey clapped quietly. "You just gave that seat power." Tara leaned against a headrest, smiling, and made this flight mean something more than outrage. Then Devon turned to Caleb, still processing. "Can I ask something?" Caleb nodded. "Did you know it would play out like this?" Caleb paused, eyes focused. I suspected. So, you came on board like an undercover CEO? No, Caleb replied. I came on as a black man in jeans and sneakers, because I shouldn't have to wear a title to be treated like a human being. That line landed hard, Corey whispered. Damn. The cabin fell into stillness, not the tense silence from earlier, but the kind that follows truth. Caleb sat back, finally resting. We don't fight to be feared, he said. We show up to be respected. Simone's voice returned through the speaker. Mr. Sterling, you've changed the charter policy in 27 minutes. The final implementation is ready for signature. Good, Caleb replied, because when we lift off next time, it'll be under a different sky. The cabin had shifted, not just in energy, but in purpose. What started as a space of quiet disdain had become something rare, an airborne reckoning. Caleb Sterling sat still in his seat, not triumphant, not gloating, but grounded around him. The passengers weren't just observers anymore. They were witnesses to something that felt personal, even if it hadn't happened to them directly. Simone's voice came through again, measured and calm. Mr. Sterling, the new Crestwing Equity Directive has been distributed across all fleet terminals. Initial compliance reports will begin by noon. Caleb nodded without speaking, letting the moment settle. Then he looked up at Tara, still standing nearby. What would you add? She raised an eyebrow. To what? To the directive. Caleb said. You're in HR. You've seen this play out in real time. Tara considered it for a beat. Don't just audit the complaints. Audit the silences. Track which crews. Never log a single issue. That's not efficiency, that's erasure. Caleb smiled, not wide, but real. Noted. Across the aisle, Devon tapped the armrest gently. Can I say something strange? Caleb turned. Strange is welcome today. Devon looked around. This might have been the most honest flight I've ever taken, and we haven't even left the ground. Laughter, light and brief, moved through the cabin like a breeze through a window that had just been opened. Then Victor Crane stood again. His face looked different, drained, but lighter. He walked down the aisle and stopped near Caleb's seat, not intruding, just present. There's something I didn't say earlier, he began, eyes cast down. Not because I was hiding it, but because I hadn't admitted it to myself until now. Caleb gestured gently. Go on. Victor cleared his throat, his voice raw. 8 years ago, I was working commercial flights. We had a black passenger, well-dressed, on time, soft-spoken, first-class ticket. No issues. The flight attendant didn't believe it, called me, asked me to double-check, said he was probably trying to sneak up from economy. The cabin was still. And I did it, Victor continued. I walked up. I asked the man to show his ID. He asked why. I couldn't answer, so he handed it over, calm, no protest. Just quiet sadness. I walked away ashamed. But I never logged it, never told anyone. Caleb's face didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Recognition without judgment. Why share that now? Victor inhaled, because I was afraid then. And I've let that fear define how I enforce rules. It starts subtle, a glance, a pause, a doubt, and then one day you're removing someone from a seat he owns. Devon exhaled audibly. And the system pretends that's just protocol. Exactly, Victor said, but it's not. It's personal. And it's taught. Caleb nodded slowly. Confession's not weakness. It's reconstruction. Victor blinked. So, what happens now? You go through full retraining, Caleb replied. Not to punish, to rebuild. If you complete it, you'll have a role in helping us train others. But this time, not with policies, with your story. Victor nodded, emotion climbing into his throat. Thank you, he whispered. Caleb offered nothing more than a small nod. But in that nod was a kind of dignity you don't buy, earn, or command. You build it, moment by moment, breath by breath. Across the cabin, Niall looked toward Caleb. You said earlier, you came dressed like this on purpose. Caleb smiled faintly. I did. I knew if I walked in with a Rolex and a suit, I'd be treated like royalty, but dignity doesn't depend on clothing. And this wasn't a test of status. It was a test of reflex, and they failed, she said. Some did, Caleb agreed, but not all. And not forever. Corey leaned over the seat in front of him. I almost filmed it. I thought that would help, that people needed to see it. They did. Caleb replied, but not through a lens. Through their own eyes. Feels different when you can't scroll away, Corey said. Exactly. Caleb stood once more, addressing the cabin not as CEO, not even as the man they had just watched dismantle an injustice, but as someone who had decided to bring everyone else with him. What happened today, it's just mine to carry. It belongs to all of you. Because you didn't just sit quietly, you spoke, you stood, you challenged, and that's what breaks patterns. A pause. This plane won't fly today. It wasn't ready. But next time, it will lift off with policy, power, and principle. All on board. Simone returned on the speaker. Voice warm. Mr. Sterling, reform measures are signed and filed. Cabin override complete, and Victor's statement is archived for training. Thank you, Caleb said. And prepare a new manifest. The future of Crestwing starts here. The cabin was quiet now, not with tension, but with a stillness earned by truth. Caleb Sterling remained near his seat. His voice no longer needed to assert authority. It had already done its work. What filled the jet now wasn't silence, it was absorption. People were still processing, but not with fear or guilt, with understanding, with clarity. Simone's voice returned over the speaker, steady and clear. Mr. Sterling, all passengers have been flagged as verified supporters of the Crestwing Equity Initiative. The company's media team has prepared an internal briefing for all future crews based on today's events. Your language, your decisions, your exact timing. Caleb nodded slightly and responded aloud. Then let this moment be the standard, not the exception. Devon, seated across from him, leaned forward. You know this'll be talked about. Word's gonna spread. People won't believe it happened without a camera, without a leak. That's the point, Caleb said. Change doesn't always need an audience. Sometimes, it needs a room of people who decide enough is enough. Then, from the back of the cabin, came a new voice. Raspy. Aged, unfamiliar. Mind if I speak? Everyone turned, in the rearmost seat. A passenger no one had heard from until now stood slowly. He was an older white man, maybe in his late 70s, wearing a simple button-down and a weathered pilot's cap tucked under his arm. His name tag read, Miles Hartley. Caleb studied him, nodding once. Go ahead. Miles cleared his throat. I flew jets for 32 years, retired 10 years ago. Back when commercial captains still got called heroes just for landing on time. A few passengers smiled. But I didn't stand today. Miles continued. I sat and watched, and I need to admit something. I trained Paul Kendrick years ago, taught him to fly, taught him protocol. But I also taught him something I wish I hadn't. I told him, when in doubt, trust your instinct. Thing is, my instinct was trained in a world that never trusted people who looked like you. His voice cracked slightly, and I passed that on. The cabin stayed silent, respectful, open. I saw Paul hesitate today. Miles added, that hesitation. That was me. That was every subtle thing I ever taught him that told him. You're right too? Assume. So, I'm not just apologizing for sitting today. I'm apologizing for what I said in motion years before this flight ever left the ground. Caleb didn't respond immediately. He let the words echo, settle, find their place. Thank you, he said finally. That's what accountability sounds like when it doesn't come with a headline. Miles nodded and sat back down. If I'd had a leader like you back then, maybe we'd have flown differently. Caleb turned to the other passengers. Let that be the legacy. Not just new policy, but new flight paths. Ones that don't just carry people, but correct the course. Then, Looking toward Nya, he added, and make sure the space looks like everyone it serves. She smiled through glassy eyes. I'm in. Corey sat back, arms folded behind his head. Best grounded flight I've ever taken, Tara agreed. And the only one that felt like it actually went somewhere. Caleb reached for his phone one last time. Simone, here, draft a formal apology to the passengers on this flight. Signed by me, not legal. Already done, she replied. One more thing, Caleb said. Make sure Nya Turner is issued a permanent Crestwing Platinum Pass, and add her to the upcoming Executive Interiors meeting. Confirmed, Simone replied. Then Caleb's voice dropped a note lower, and placed a formal ban on Howard Gaines and any affiliated associates from booking Crestwing services under personal or corporate funds. Already flagged and recorded, Simone said. It's done. Caleb set the phone down. The weight of the morning was behind him, but what came next? Building something better had only just begun. He stood, glanced out the window at the sunlit tarmac, and spoke once more, not to the crew or the passengers or even himself, but to the air. This cabin failed, then it healed. That's our new standard. And with that, he pressed a button, opened the cabin intercom, and made one last announcement to the room. Thank you all for not looking away because of what happened here. No Crestwing flight will ever take off with unchecked silence again. And that's not a promise, it's a policy. The jet stayed grounded for the day. But the truth that took flight inside its walls would reach farther than any mile it could have traveled, and that was enough. For now, if you believe in change that starts not with hashtags, but with courage, share this. Let others know that dignity doesn't whisper, it lands, because silence protects power, but speaking up, that's how it flies.